gave him on his program.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are live, and I'm joined by Chris Wyatt, who's on my right here. Actually, let me just switch over here because the president isn't on yet. So this is Chris Wyatt on my right. He is a retired colonel of the U.S. military, and was based for a very long time in Africa in general, all over Africa, and has a very uh, passionate interest in South Africa. We don't have a lot of viewers at the moment, but I imagine that as we get closer to the president coming online, some viewers may tune in. So I might have to repeat who you are again. I did let people on social media know that you will be joining me on the stream. So I encourage everyone to ask Chris any questions. But I think very quickly, if you want to just, say who you are to people who might be tuning in now. Yeah.
Sure, Joe. I don't mind you mentioning who I am and what I'm about repeatedly. I mean, everybody likes their ego stroked. There's nothing wrong with that. But seriously, so I'm Chris Wyatt, retired U.S. Army colonel. I retired full colonel, full bird. Pretty cool stuff. Get the little bird on there. I retired October of 2019 after 36 years service in the U.S. Army. I was an intelligence officer. Before that, I was an enlisted soldier and a non-commissioned officer in the Signal Corps during the Cold War, and then became a commissioned officer. As an intelligence officer, worked at the tactical, the operational, strategic levels of warfare, and also later became a foreign area officer for sub-Saharan Africa, which is what I spent the latter half of my career doing. And so I've served 3 tours of duty in Germany, in Bad Kreuznach, Hanau, Gelnhausen, Stuttgart. One of those tours I was in 2 locations. And then I've also served a tour in Italy, in Vicenza, and Africa. I've lived and worked in Tunisia, Liberia, Botswana, Malawi, Niger, Mauritania, Uganda, and Ethiopia. Those are the places I lived for periods of time. I also have traveled in official capacity to over 30, close to 40 African countries, and on holiday to a few of those as well. Worked at the National Security Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, U.S. Africa Command, the Army War College, the Pentagon. Anyway, so a lot of different things. I've done HIV programs, Ebola, counterterrorism, peacekeeping, combat, served in the Balkans, in Bosnia, Croatia, Kosovo, Iraq, all that,
Wow.
Standard nonsense.
Sure. Very, very, very experienced military man, obviously being colonel and all. All right, so let's get right into it. We do have a few viewers, so like I said, at any time you want to ask questions, you're more than welcome to. I will pop us up here like this, so you guys can see that I am waiting on the ENCA YouTube channel. It's on, it's ready. It should, the moment the president is on, should just start playing. So until then, we'll just have a nice conversation. If you guys have any questions for Chris, let me know. I have a question though. What do you predict from this speech from the president? Do you predict anything?
Well, before that, Joe, I just noticed in my Skype, there's this little warning button from Microsoft up there. It says, Joe is using a device that could record or broadcast. Are you recording this?
Yeah.
Oh, no. No, seriously. I don't expect a whole lot. I'm going to do a video now. Do I dare say this? Because you won't steal my thunder, Joe, but my thesis and my upcoming videos for a couple other topics have been appropriated by other YouTubers. But nonetheless, I'll say this. But I'm about to do a video. I'm about to do a video on leadership from the ANC. If the African National Congress purports to represent the people of South Africa, and every time Cyril comes on and says "my people," unless he simply means Xhosa or Zulu, which I suspect may be part of what the deal is, but if he means my people, which would be Venda, Coloreds, Afrikaners, English speakers, Portuguese, everyone in South Africa, the San, the Khoi, if he represents our people in that respect, it's time for the ANC to step up with leadership and address this issue now, I've seen a lot of footage that's coming out in the last day or two from people purportedly recording videos, contemporaneous videos in townships and in small rural villages in which Black African communities are shoulder to shoulder walking around, no police presence, no SANDF presence. Yet on the beaches in the Western Cape, we see, basically martial law and citizens being arrested for going about their normal business. My point is that if you represent the entire country, then you need to stop this criminalization of people who are law-abiding citizens. My point specifically being that they're pushing people into corners, and that's a dangerous game for the ANC to do. You need to start representing the whole country and not just a portion of it, particularly minorities. It's dangerous not to represent them. So I think that Ramaphosa, if he really was president of South Africa and really cared about South Africans, tonight part of his speech would address the issue about what's been going on with the security services and abuse of citizens or claimed abuse of citizens. We don't know all the facts and all the cases, but the video is quite disturbing. We've seen it repeatedly. And also why the army is deployed, where it's deployed, why the police are deployed, where they're deployed, what's going on. But I don't expect to see that. I expect to see, to answer your question specifically, more of the same sort of thing from Mr. Ramaphosa. When Puxatawny Ramaphosa poked his head out like the groundhog, trying to let us know whether winter was going to end last week or whenever it was, after his 3-week absence, we really didn't get much out of that. I have to be honest. I watched the video a couple of times, which was painful. And at the end of it, I began to wonder if I was capable of understanding modern standard written English because I have no idea what the hell he said.
Actually, that's a very good point. Like, okay, so I'm going to ask you a question, which will lead on to another question. Being a colonel in the U.S. military, did you do a lot of interrogations in your career?
Well, as a colonel, you don't do interrogations normally. Someone that works in law enforcement does interrogations, and some people in intelligence do them. Enlisted soldiers are the actual interrogators, and counterintelligence agents do it. I can neither confirm. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, yes, I have been involved in interrogations, but I'm not a professional interrogator, so to speak. That's actually a skill set, requires specific training. Some of that training I've had the actual experience of doing it as a consequence of doing national security investigations against people accused of espionage or treason against our country. So, yeah, but it's not something you do on a regular basis. But yeah, no, I've been experienced in picking up liars, looking at their faces and their actions and things like that. It's not
So,
particularly difficult to pick up.
when you look at Cyril's speech, are there any telltale signs of deception?
What I see in Cyril Ramaphosa's speech last time is two things. One, a gentleman that's full of himself and is loving his CV being complete now by being the president of South Africa. That was his ultimate goal ever since the CODESA event. I think that's part of it. And the second piece of it is someone who's terrified that he will find himself involved in a near-term Polokwane massacre in which he's asked to step aside and a vote is held within the ANC. Or simply a palace coup from Luthuli House. I think that is a real possibility in the ANC in his eyes. Whether it's real or not, or it's going to happen or not, I'm not predicting that. You never know. Someone asked me, was it Roman asked me, I was on his stream yesterday or something like that, about the possibility of an insurrection or civil war in South Africa. And I said, well, it's a fool's game to argue against something like that. It's not. I'm not predicting it. I don't think it's in the cards for the moment. But you cannot count those sort of things out. The thing about uprisings is they can happen in a spur of the moment. We look at what happened in Tunisia with a university graduate who couldn't find employment and was selling goods and wares on the street, harassed by the police, and eventually was so despondent that he did self-immolation and lit himself on fire as a protest. That plus the revelation by WikiLeaks of State Department cables about the fraud, corruption, and nepotism was happening in Ben Ali's government in Tunisia. Those two events sparked the Arab Spring, along with a few other things. But that's what torched Tunisia, and it went up in flames. The government got under control relatively quickly. But my point is that look at Syria. These things can spiral out of control very quickly. It doesn't take a whole lot. That's why it's so amazing that that after Sharpeville in '60 and after Soweto in '76, that South Africa didn't simply go up in flames. '85, very different situation when Soweto riots took place. That went on for about 10 months before the security services could tamp it down and get control of civil order once again. But yeah, these things can get out of control very fast. And the ANC is playing a very dangerous game in going after people who are regularly standard law-abiding citizens. It's not healthy and it's not right. It's morally wrong.
Absolutely. All right, so you didn't notice anything like that he was maybe lying?
He's a politician. Most of what he says is a lie.
That's a good answer.
Most politicians, except maybe some opposition leaders, because they have the luxury of telling the truth until they get in power.
That's true. Also, just in case you guys are wondering, this isn't the first time Chris has been on my channel. It's not the first, and I've been on his channel. I did put a link in the description to Chris's channel. So please go check it out. He does a lot of presentations about South Africa and talks a lot about South Africa. He's also been on Willem Petzer's channel. He's been on Ronaldo's channel. He's been on Ramon's channel, Renegade Report. So yeah, you're actually getting quite popular in South Africa at the moment. Um, a
Well,
lot of
with some folks,
yeah.
not with everybody. I don't
um,
think Julius Malema would be inviting me to a tea service.
you never know. You never. So yeah, please go check out his channel. It's really cool stuff. It's informative and it's interesting. And Chris and I did a show on the U.S. Space Force, which was also very interesting. And its purpose. Do we really need it? And other questions related to that. And it was very fascinating. And he did convince me that the U.S. Space Force is actually we actually do need it. And then tomorrow we'll be chatting about 9/11, just the events around 9/11. Maybe we might dwell into the conspiracy side of it. But I think me being in Egypt in 9/11 will give a different perspective. I'll tell Chris what I experienced, and then he can tell me what he was going through being in the military at that time. And I think it might be an interesting conversation. So going back to this, yeah, we just await for the president. I don't think he's going to be on time, Chris. I'm going to be honest. Do you have
Oh,
3 hours on your time? Like, do you have?
no, I don't have 3 hours because I'm going to do a live stream at 9:30 to talk about what he said and didn't say. I'm ready to take copious notes. But listen, Joe, you're asking about my ability to detect deception. I've just picked up some deception in your comments there. Let me point it out. I don't think it was my convincing argument that got you to buy into Space Force. Let's be honest. You are really excited about the possibility of owning your personal tricorder and being able to use a transporter. That's why you bought into Space Force. Come on, man. I can see that. You're lying. Come on, be honest, Joe.
I'm not a Trekkie, man. You know
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Closet Trek. You say that stuff all the time. I got a little cowlick going on in my hair. Where's this thing at? There he
Yeah.
is. Yeah, I look like alfalfa there.
We have someone tuning in saying, "How's it?" Let's see. He's Malkop Media. Hey, Malkop, nice to see you here, man. How's it, gentlemen? Goeienaand, San Bonani. Good evening to you too, man. Thank you for tuning in. And we also have Mikhail Kanaka, fellow comedian and friend. I'm by no means a fan of the current drawn out situation. Secondly, I feel that Ramaphosa could handle the NCCC better. However, the previous address was proof of an infighting. Ooh, interesting. Do you agree with that? Do you think there is this what do you call it? Like almost like a Game of Thrones kind of thing happening now, or with NDZ and Cyril? Do you think that's happening?
Well, yeah, I think it is happening. It's been happening all along and behind the scenes. Few of us are privy to what discussions take place in the Thule House or what takes place at the presidential residence and in cabinet meetings. I suspect that this infighting started within hours or short days after Ramaphosa became the president and Zuma was bounced out on his ear after resigning. So this has been going along, but I think the public just hasn't seen it. If you look back to the party conference, Cyril Ramaphosa won by something like 79 votes or something like that, or 100 and some. If you took away 79 votes, then Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma would have been the president of the ANC, and then of course would have become the president of South Africa. This break, this schism in the ANC is real. It's genuine. It's been going on for a long time, but it's becoming more and more pronounced. The only reason the EFF exists is because a bunch of ANC malcontents fled the party after Julius Malema was thrown out. And the same reason COPE exists, because a bunch of Thabo Mbeki malcontents left and formed a party thinking that they had the support of the people because they were running the country. Well, they were running the country in some respects effectively. I wouldn't say entirely effectively, but what happened is that they didn't have the support they thought they did. And the highest they polled was 7.5%, and now they're just an asterisk. The Freedom Front Plus can trounce COPE these days. So, yeah, I think that's exactly right. Now, Mikhail said that it's proof infighting. I agree with that entirely, and that Ramaphosa could handle the National Coronavirus Command Council better. Well, you may have a point there, Mikhail, but I disagree. I don't think there's any justification whatsoever for National Coronavirus Command Force or Center. The existing mechanisms of the government are able to handle this. The government should have been able to set up within the health ministry or health department or in the cabinet a task force, but a task force handles events, pushes resources, things like that. It doesn't dictate and issue regulations which have the weight of law to imprison people, which is even questionable on a legal basis. The 230,000 people who've now been criminalized for ordinary civil conduct for such heinous crimes, not child molestation, not rape, not assassination, not murder, but wait for it, Joe, sitting on the beach. We know how that endangers public safety.
Yeah, tremendously.
Nursing your child on the beach is among the most heinous of crimes in South Africa, as is standing in your front yard as a police officer walks by who isn't wearing a mask and then engaging in conversation instead of simply snapping to attention and showing utmost respect. Yes, boss. Yes, boss. Meneer, meneer. Unless instead of saying that to whoever the police officer is, you find yourself hauled into a police station for 7 hours, fingerprinted, photographed, and criminalized. It's reprehensible. Anyway.
Well, I think Mikhail is also replying to what you said here. Whether Ramaphosa was planning on cleaning the ANC of rabble rousers is up for debate. However, the pandemic has stopped a possible in-party cleanup. Yeah, yeah. There's. I think so. I guess I can agree. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, when Ramaphosa was elected and all the Ramaphobia euphoria was going on, I cautioned people on my LinkedIn. I didn't do a YouTube channel then because I was still serving, but I did write on LinkedIn that beware, folks. Ramaphosa is not some new character who just showed up on the stage and is a market capitalist who cares about a multiracial capitalist-based society. No. He's a inside party cadre who got handed tens, hundreds of millions of dollars of equity in companies, thus became fabulously wealthy, and ran off and made more money doing that, sat in the backside. Then finally, when his ambitions rose as he got in age, became the deputy president, presided over Americana, and was involved in the Zuma administration throughout the state capture era with the Guptas and all the other nonsense going on. So people like, yay. But I think the problem is that people were so disgusted by the Zuma era that anything, including a talking horse, would have been preferable. Mr. Ed would have been preferable to anything. And so if it had been another
Mr. Ed.
Had it been another candidate beyond Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma for the ANC, it's a very real possibility that Sir Ramaphosa would have lost that election a few years ago in late 2017 if it had not been her. But enough people rallied against the possibility of a continuation of the Zuma era that he won. But I think that the issue here is that in the early stages, I caution that this is, I'm not attacking Ramaphosa. He has an opportunity. And if you read my LinkedIn articles and read the postings I've done there, you'll see that I'm consistent saying from the outset that South Africa has a narrow window, particularly on my article about land and poverty, talking about expropriation and other issues. South Africa and Ramaphosa have a narrow window. This was in late 2017. I wrote this. The point being is that if he's genuine, he has a chance to reform, but he has very limited maneuver space because there's so much Zuma support in the party. The leftists, hard-leaning, kill all the white people, chase them into the ocean, expropriate, nationalize, and it'll all just be the land of milk and honey. There's so many of those people in the ANC these days that he had a very limited space to work. After a year of him being in office and listening to him lie at the United Nations about there are no murders on farms in South Africa, and then also tell people that please come to South Africa, we're open for business, bring your foreign direct investment, and then to stand up in Parliament and defend the concept of expropriation without compensation, I don't take the man seriously anymore. He doesn't care about South Africans. He's a party hack, and I would not recommend anybody hold out great faith that he's going to do anything in the interest of all South Africans.
Yeah.
So.
Very strong views, and I unfortunately have to agree. I was one of those people that was very Ramaphosa, like he's gonna be our savior, and it's gonna change afterwards. I didn't know everything that you're mentioning now, only after the fact. Especially when, even though it's recent, but I mean, I started researching a bit more and started to realize, maybe it's not going to be that as different as we thought as things came out over the weeks that followed. But also, when he started to say like on live television, like there's no killing of farmers, and then he said, America should mind its own business on live national television, which really irked me because it's almost like Egypt again for me, where Egyptians during 9/11, and I'll talk about this more tomorrow, but they were very anti-American just because USA declared war on Iraq, and they would hurt me and bully me and all that stuff and basically be racist towards me because I was American, nothing else. And
Yeah.
that I felt that again when the president was saying, "Oh, Americans, mind your own business" and all that stuff. That hurt. It brought back those memories. Ramaphosa saying that, and it's worrying. And that's when I started to really research about Ramaphosa and who he is and stuff like that. And then when that documentary came out, what's it called? How to Steal a Nation. That brought up to light a lot of other things too. So unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of
Joe,
Ramaphosa.
I think you missed something entirely there, Joe. When you were in Egypt, you really missed that the real issue here is your white privilege, and that's the reason why they were giving you a hard time.
Yeah. I'm very white, Chris. I'm very white.
It's a lovely, it's a lovely tan. You must have been out surfing in the Western Cape or something. So, anyway, but hey, Mikkel has a point here. It's a legitimate point. Mikkel says that under the Disaster Management Act, the National Coronavirus Command Council is something that can be constituted. Not disputing that. What I said is it's not legitimate. That was what I said. And there is a court case now from the Democratic Alliance challenging the National Coronavirus Command Council. It's not legitimate, in my view. It's unnecessary. The fact that it's legal doesn't make it right. Apartheid was legal. It
Yeah.
was the law of the land. Doesn't make it morally right.
Yeah.
You can
Exactly.
make something legal. That doesn't make it right. Right now, the government can take your land in South Africa through expropriation. And
Yeah.
your property, by the way, your bank accounts to pay for all this money that they don't have for this coronavirus, they can take that from you. But they have to compensate you. So if they take your money, they got to give you the money back. So that's a wash. But they can take your land right now through expropriation, but they have to compensate you. We have a similar process in the United States called eminent domain, in which the government in the public interest can take your land and pay you a fair market value. I don't think that's morally right at all. The government should have to buy your land from a willing seller. Now, the argument there, of course, is that for the need for railroads, telegraph lines, telephone lines, infrastructure, highways, ports, that's why they can do it. It's a legitimate argument, but that doesn't make it right, and
Yeah.
it's legal.
I just noticed that someone disliked this video. I guess they don't like what we're saying.
Wow, we got more dislikes than likes. Well, thanks a lot. Appreciate you tuning in. Perhaps people followed me over from Willem Petzer's channel and came here to troll me. Apparently, I'm a CIA stooge. I don't know if you got the word on that, Joe.
No,
Uh,
I didn't.
but if I'm a CIA stooge, I'd like to see that money in my bank account. They're a little behind in arrears for paying me. All I'm getting now is my retirement check from the Department of Defense and my disability check from the Veterans Administration. So please, if the CIA is paying me, please put those in dollars, and put that in my account anytime. That would be much appreciated. In fact, I got my stimulus check from Trump, but I haven't got my CIA pay yet. So.
Yeah, so if you guys that are watching, there are a few of you, just give this video a bit of a like. Come on, we're just having a conversation before the president comes on, trying to talk about some interesting things. And don't be shy to comment in the section like Mikal has. Thank you, Mikal, for commenting and giving us something to talk about. I hope it wasn't you that disliked the video.
Well,
That'd be a plot twist.
yeah, Joe. No, it's cool if people want to dislike it. That's fine. If people can tune in, they can tune out. They want to watch. No problem. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is kind of weird to see one dislike and no likes. I haven't seen that recently. I guess that's a ringing endorsement for our conversation. Joe, I was going to ask you if I was a guest or a co-host. Now I'm just a guest. I don't want to be the co-host if it's only dislikes.
Oh man. But now no, you're definitely a co-host here, man. You can't resign like halfway through the show. That doesn't count.
Don't put that stink on me, brother.
All right. Yeah. So, guys, again, you can comment, ask us questions. There's a few more viewers now, so just so you know, my name is Joe Emilio. This is Chris Wyatt on my right. Chris Wyatt has served for many years in the military, 36 years, I believe, and he was based for quite a large number of those years at that time in Africa, and does a lot of work in Africa and stuff like that. So he's very knowledgeable about South Africa, has an interest in South Africa. Thank you to whoever just liked the video. Now we're even. That was really annoying me. But yeah, so Chris White.
We could win an election now. We have 50%.
So Chris White is very knowledgeable about South Africa. Has done a lot of research in South Africa. So it's going to be very interesting having a chat with him, especially after the speech. But then again, I think he's going to go on his own channel and give his thoughts about the speech. So you guys can follow him on his channel. The link is in the description below. So we have Mikhail here saying the DA's case is more based on the legitimacy of the council members and the decision being made, not so much the need for the council.
Yeah, well, I have not read the brief. I'm not a barrister or an attorney. Many people over the years suggested I go to law school, and I don't find it that appealing. What I will say, though, is that Mikhail is correct from my interpretation of what I heard from John Steenhuisen and what I've read in the press. That it is more about that. But again, my issue is I mentioned there was a case from the DA. My issue is the legitimacy or even the need for it. I don't think there's a need for this body. It can be done in-house. Trump didn't create some national thing. Now people are say yes, but he has a task force. Yeah, but the task force doesn't have legal authority to do things the way that this coronavirus command. I mean, listen, you've got the Minister of No Trade, Ibrahim Patel, running around telling people they can't buy bikinis. Who the hell does he think he is? Seriously. People might want to wear bikinis. I mean, I don't personally, but they might want to buy them. And blue jeans, you can't buy blue jeans. What is that? How does that stop the spread of a virus? It doesn't. It's utter
Panties
nonsense.
too. There is panties.
Yeah, and of course, yeah. Does it mean I can't buy bikini briefs? you know, but anyway, if that's the case, I'm in trouble. But no, so the Minister of No Trade once again with this nonsensical ban on e-commerce because it's unfair to bricks and mortars because the government has shut down their commerce. So it's only fair to shut down all commerce. Where do people get this thought process and this mind? It's utterly insane. Was it fair for the horse and buggy manufacturers and the horse raising industry and breeding industry to have to compete with the internal combustion engine? No, but you adapt or you die. And you know what? It's been 26 years since the first graphical-based browser, Mosaic, came out, and e-commerce bursted on the scene in 1995 after that. So people have had 25 years to adapt. If you don't have a web presence, I have no sympathy for you. And to keep people from getting the services and goods they need at home because you're banning e-commerce, the Minister of No Trade really needs to get his act together.
No, absolutely. I agree with you. I mean, look, the biggest hot topic right now, and I don't know if you noticed on Twitter, ANC, the hashtag ANC must fall is like, last time I checked was on 8,000 tweets. And it's trending now, which is insane. And yeah, people are, oh man, you can feel the tension here. There's this tension, especially on social media, of people, they're not happy with the tobacco ban. That, again, one of those things that just absolutely make no sense. The alcohol ban apparently is going to be lifted. We should hear anything. And if he's on time, we have about 1 minute and 40 seconds left if he's on time. And yeah, a lot of people are upset about all this stuff that just don't make sense. I mean, I believe in America, when you guys went on lockdown, did they ban cigarettes? Did they ban alcohol?
Well, of course, remember, Joe, you're an American, so it depends on the state and locality. The states have that authority. So here in Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, hard liquor and wine is only sold in state-owned enterprises, state stores. So the state shut them down instantly. So we've not been able to purchase hard liquor or wine since the outset of the lockdown. Back the day after South Africa went in lockdown, we went in lockdown in this county. Now, our lockdown predates South Africa's in the state, but it was limited to Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and the counties around that. But my county, York County, went under the day after you guys did, within 24 hours. So we have not been able to buy that since then. Other states and localities do have that, but I'm not aware of any cigarette bans or tobacco bans anywhere in the country. It's just utter nonsense. It's very condescending and also paternalistic of the ANC to make the nonsense what NDZ says. Well, when people zoll, they put the slide on the paper, then they share the zoll. You know what? So the only people who smoke anything are people who share cigarettes. Look, I don't share cups and utensils with people. I wouldn't share a cigarette if I smoked, unless I was, a hard up prisoner and it was the only smoke I could get in a prison, then I'd share it. But come on, that's very paternalistic and disgusting. I mean, the cigarettes that are being sold now are the illicit ones and Zoll. That's what's happening. That's what people are getting their hands on. And so you've exacerbated a situation where people who are addicted to nicotine and have to have that cigarette now are turning to illicit things, and who knows what's in there. So no, these people are just clueless. They have absolutely no idea what's going on. The fact that they have authority to run a country is bizarre. But you know what? I could say the same thing about a number of officials in this country too.
Yeah. All right. So Mikhail said, because I don't want him to think that we're ignoring him. The problem that had arisen is that other parties do have any representation within the NCCC. For example, the DA, EFF, FF plus. I think the president is the
Is he
president.
about to go on?
I think so. I think we're still
Everybody's
waiting.
online, Joe. Everybody's online. Ronaldo, Willem
I
Petsa,
know, everyone's online.
Morning Shot. Everybody's on, man.
I know. But if you're tuning in for the first time here, this is a military man who served for quite a while in Africa. Very knowledgeable about South Africa, so we're going to have a nice chat with him about South Africa as we wait for the president to go on. If you're here for the first time, please subscribe to my channel. It'd be very nice, and give this video a like. We won't talk during the president. We're just waiting for him to go on, as you can see.
Wait. That's the only reason I tuned in, so I could talk over Cyril Ramaphosa. I can't talk?
Well, we might say something. Like if it's... Oh, here we go.
In response to the coronavirus pandemic. Since then, we have implemented severe and unprecedented measures, including a nationwide lockdown, to contain the spread of the virus. I am sorry that these measures imposed a great hardship on you, restricting your right to move freely, to work, and to eke out a livelihood. As a result of these measures we imposed and the sacrifices that you made, we have managed to slow the rate of infection and prevent our health facilities from being overwhelmed. We have used the time during the lockdown to build up an extensive public health response and prepare our health system for the anticipated surge in infections. Now, as we enter the next phase of our struggle against this virus, it is once again your actions that will determine the fate of our nation. As individuals, as families, as communities, it is you who will determine whether we experience the devastation that so many other countries have suffered, or whether we can spare our people, our society, and our economy from the worst effects of this pandemic. We know that the most effective defense against this virus is also the simplest. Washing our hands regularly, wearing a face mask, keeping at least a 1.5 meter distance from other people, avoiding touching our faces with unwashed hands, and cleaning surfaces that we touch regularly. It is through diligently and consistently observing these basic practices that will make us overcome this pandemic. There are now 22,583 confirmed coronavirus cases in South Africa. Around half of these people have recovered, either because their symptoms have been mild or because of the care that they received in our hospitals. Tragically, some 429 people have lost their lives. To their families, friends, and colleagues, we offer our deepest sympathies. Your loss is our loss. There are now just over 11,000 active coronavirus cases in the country. Of these, 842 patients are in hospital, and 128 of these are in intensive care. The number of infected people could have been much higher had we not acted when we did to impose drastic containment measures. We are consequently in a much better position than many other countries were at that stage in the progression of the disease. As a result of the drastic containment measures we have taken, we've been able to strengthen our health response. As of today, we've conducted well over 580,000 coronavirus tests and more than 12 million screenings. This is much more than what many other countries, especially on our continent, have been able to do. There are nearly 60,000 community health workers who have been going door to door across the country to identify possible cases of coronavirus. In preparation for the expected increase in infections, around 20,000 hospital beds have been and are being repurposed for COVID-19 cases. And there are 27 filled hospitals that are being built around the country. A number of these hospitals are ready to receive coronavirus patients. At the same time, we have experienced several challenges, including a shortage of diagnostic medical supplies such as test kits as a result of the great demand for these supplies across the world. This has contributed to lengthy turnaround times for coronavirus testing, which in turn has had an impact on the effectiveness of our programs. But we are attending to this. The scale and the speed of the public health response to this emergency has been quite impressive, but there is still much more that we still need to do. We have known all along that the lockdown would only delay the spread of the virus, but that it would not be able to stop it. Until there is a vaccine available to all, the coronavirus will continue to spread in our population. This means that we must get used to living with this coronavirus for some time to come. There is a massive global effort to develop a vaccine, of which our own country, South Africa, is part. Government is supporting and funding several research projects, including a plan to locally manufacture coronavirus vaccines as soon as candidates are available. We will use the skills, the expertise, the infrastructure, and the organizations within the vaccines industry in our country to produce and distribute the vaccine. We have argued that should a vaccine be developed anywhere in the world, it should be made freely available and equitably to all the citizens of all countries in the world. As scientists had predicted, the infections in our country have now started to rise sharply. 1/3 of the cumulative confirmed cases were recorded in the last week alone. And we should expect that these numbers will rise even further and even faster. Various models have been built by model builders to predict the trajectory of the virus and to help inform our planning and budgeting. These models tell us two important things. Firstly, that the coronavirus pandemic in South Africa is going to get much worse before it gets better. Secondly, and most importantly, they tell us that the duration, scale, and impact of the pandemic depends on our actions as a society and on our behavior as individuals. By following basic defense practices, we can reduce both the number of infections and the number of deaths. When I last addressed the nation, I said that we would undertake a process of consultation to guide the actions we must now take. Since then, we have met with the leaders of political parties that are represented in our parliament, and with business, trade unions, and the community constituency. We've met with our premiers, our mayors, representatives of the South African Local Government Association, SALGA, the traditional leaders in our country, and representatives of the interfaith communities. As we have done from the start of this crisis, we have also sought the advice of the Ministerial Advisory Committee that advises our Minister of Health on COVID-19, who are a group of highly qualified, respected, and experienced scientists, clinicians, and epidemiologists, as well as public health experts. We are extremely grateful for the work that this Ministerial Advisory Committee has been able to do and continue to do to ensure that our response is informed by the best available scientific evidence. We appreciate the diverse and sometimes challenging views of the scientists and health professionals in our country, which stimulate public debate and enrich our response, and we respect that. We have also been guided by advice from the World Health Organization and the Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention, which is part of the African Union. As we are dealing with a pandemic that affects the lives and the livelihoods of all South Africans, it was important that we consult as widely as possible. These consultations have been both necessary and worthwhile in that we received several constructive suggestions. These suggestions have enriched the thinking in government, providing a direct view of the challenges that our people in different constituencies confront. The groups we consulted are as diverse and as varied as the South African people themselves. And all of them agree that we acted appropriately and decisively to slow the spread of the virus. They are all united in their insistence that our central goal must be to save lives and to protect livelihoods. While there are several areas of difference, all of these groups are in broad agreement on the approach we need to take to build on the gains that we have made thus far. While the nationwide lockdown has been effective, it cannot be sustained indefinitely. We introduced the 5-level COVID-19 alert system to manage the gradual easing of the lockdown. This risk-adjusted approach is guided by several criteria, including the level of infections and the rate of transmission, the capacity of our health facilities, the extent of the implementation of public health interventions, and the economic and social impact of continued restrictions. It is on the basis of these criteria and the following consultation that Cabinet has determined that the alert level for the whole country should be lowered from level 4 to level 3, with effect from the 1st of June 2020. Moving to alert level 3 marks a significant shift in our approach to the pandemic. This will result in the opening up of the economy and the removal of a number of restrictions on the movement of people, while significantly expanding and intensifying our public health interventions. Even as we move to alert level 3, it is important that we should be aware that there are a few parts of our country where the disease is concentrated and where infections continue to rise. We will have what we call a differentiated approach to deal with these areas that have far higher levels of infection and transmission. These areas will be declared coronavirus hotspots. A hotspot is defined as an area that has more than 5 infected people per 100,000 people or where new infections are increasing at a very fast pace. The following metros in our country have been identified as coronavirus hotspots: Tshwane, Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni, eThekwini, Nelson Mandela Bay, Buffalo City, and Cape Town. There are other areas that are also hotspots, and they being West Coast, Overberg, and Cape Winelands district municipalities in the Western Cape, Chris Hani district in the Eastern Cape, and Ilembe district in KwaZulu-Natal. We are particularly concerned about the situation in the city of Cape Town and in the Western Cape generally, which now has more than half the total infections in the country. We are attending to this as a matter of urgency. The list of hotspot areas will be reviewed every 2 weeks, depending on the progression of the virus. In dealing with the virus in these areas, we will implement intensive interventions aimed at decreasing the number of new infections. We're putting in place enhanced measures of surveillance, infection control, and management. We will assign a full-time team of experienced personnel to each of these hotspots. This team will include epidemiologists, family practitioners, nurses, community health workers, public health experts, and emergency medical services, and these will be supported by the Cuban doctors who are experts. We will link each hotspot to testing services, isolation facilities, quarantine facilities, treatment, hospital beds, and contact tracing. Should it be necessary, any part of the country could be returned to alert levels 4 or 5 if the spread of infection is not contained despite our interventions, and that where we see that there is a risk of our health facilities being overwhelmed. In time, however, through our efforts, it will be possible, and we are aiming for this, to place areas where infections are low on levels 2 and 1. The implementation of Alert Level 3 from the beginning of June will involve the return to operation of most sectors of our economy, subject to the observance of strict health protocols and social distancing rules. The opening of the economy and other activities means that more public servants will also be required to go back to work. This will be done in accordance with provisions of the Occupational Health and Safety Act and as guided by the Department of Public Service and Administration, working together with all government departments. We appreciate the work that continues to be done by public servants, especially those who are in the front line in the fight against COVID-19. The safety of all workers, including public servants, is a matter of concern to us. We will continue to make all efforts for the adequate provision of personal protection equipment to ensure safety for everyone while at work. Our priority is to reduce the opportunities for the transmission of the virus and create a safe environment for everyone. We are therefore asking that those who do not need to go to work or to go to an educational institution continue to stay at home. People will also be able to leave their homes to buy goods or obtain services, including medical health care. People will also be able, in this level 3, to be able to exercise at any time during the day, provided this is not done in groups. The curfew and the movement of people will be lifted. Alcohol will be sold for home consumption only under strict conditions on specified days and for limited hours. Announcements in this regard will be made once we have concluded discussions with the sector on the various conditions. The sale of tobacco products will remain prohibited in Alert Level 3 due to the health risks associated with smoking. All gatherings will remain prohibited except for funerals with no more than 50 people or meetings in the workplace for work purposes. Any place open to the public where cultural, sporting, entertainment, recreational, exhibitional, organizational, or similar activities may take place will remain closed. We have had fruitful discussions with the leaders of the interfaith religious community on their proposals for the partial opening of spiritual worship and counseling services subject to certain norms and standards. We have all agreed to have further discussions on this issue and are confident that we will find a workable solution. We wish our Muslim compatriots well over Eid. They have all gone through a period of sacrifice, which should ordinarily be followed by a celebration. We wish to thank them for making the necessary adjustments to this celebration as we continue to fight this pandemic together. In opening up the economy, we will rely on social compacts with all key role players to address the key risks factors at the workplace and in the interface between employees and the public. We will therefore be finalizing a number of sector protocols and will require every company to develop a workplace plan before they reopen their operations. According to these plans, companies will need to put in place sanitary and social distancing measures and facilities. They will need to screen workers on arrival each day, quarantine those who may be infected, and make arrangements for them to be tested. They also need to assist with contact tracing if employees test positive. Because of their vulnerability, all staff who are older than 60 years of age and those who suffer from underlying conditions such as heart disease, diabetes, chronic respiratory disease, and cancer should ideally stay at home. Employees who can work from home should be allowed to do so. Subject to these measures, all manufacturing, mining, construction, financial services, professional and business services, information technology, communications, government services, and media services will commence full-time reopening from the 1st of June. Appropriate restart and phasing in arrangements will need to be put in place for every workplace. Wholesale and retail trade will be fully opened, including stores, spaza shops, and informal traders. E-commerce will continue to remain open as well. Other sectors that opened previously, such as agriculture and forestry, utilities, medical services, food production and manufacture of hygiene products, will remain fully opened. To ensure that we maintain social distancing, certain high-risk economic activities will remain prohibited. These include places such as restaurants, bars, taverns, except for delivery or collection of food. Accommodation and domestic air travel, except for business travel, which will be phased in on dates to be announced. Conferences, events, entertainment and sporting facilities. personal care services, including hairdressing and beauty services. The return to work will be phased in so that the workplace can be made coronavirus ready. It must be done in a manner that avoids and reduces risk of infection. We have held discussions with the tourism, hotel and restaurant industry regarding the challenges and hardship these sectors are experiencing. They have made several proposals regarding the measures they intend to put in place when their sectors are opened. We are giving consideration to these proposals, and we are confident that we will find a workable solution as well. There are many companies that have gone beyond what is required by regulation to support the coronavirus response, including those who have already provided screening, testing, and even isolation facilities for their employees. And we thank them for this. We will be discussing with larger employers how they can make quarantine facilities available for their workers as well. We applaud those companies and individuals that have contributed to the Solidarity Fund and in other ways to our response. And these include companies such as Volkswagen, which is building a field hospital in an unused factory in Nelson Mandela Bay that will be able to accommodate up to 4,000 beds. One of the greatest challenges we will face with a move to level 3, which will enable the return to work of, well, up to 8 million people, will be the increased risk of transmission in public transport. We need to have a partnership between commuters, taxi and bus operators, business and government to take our people to places of work safely. Commuters will always need to wear masks, be it in buses, in taxis, or on trains, to wash their hands before and after they have traveled, and avoid touching their faces with unwashed hands. Commuters will also need to keep a safe distance from other commuters. Taxi and bus operators need to observe the regulations to be announced by the Minister of Transport, including ensuring that their vehicles are regularly sanitized. A number of businesses have advised us that they are looking at how they can reduce congestion on public transport, including through staggering working hours and providing transport for employees. Our national borders will remain closed except for the transport of goods and the repatriation of our nationals. Another difficult challenge that we had to confront is the reopening of schools. Our priority is the health and well-being of learners, students, educators, and workers in these institutions. We are also concerned about the growth and development of our children, and that an entire generation of learners should not be permanently disadvantaged by this pandemic. We are therefore taking a cautious and a phased approach to the reopening of schools, guided by medical advice and in consultation with all stakeholders. We will be resuming classes for grades 7 and 12 learners from the 1st of June. Strict infection control measures and, where necessary, additional water and sanitation infrastructure are being put in place to enable social distancing, regular hand washing, and learner safety. Measures are also being put in place to ensure safety as children access the school nutrition program and learner transport. The school calendar will be revised and the curriculum will be trimmed so that we can still recover the 2020 year school. It is understandable that there is some concern about the reopening of schools And I must stress that no parent will be forced to send their child to school if they are worried about safety at the school. But if we all work together, if we diligently follow all the precautions and protocols, we'll be able to keep our schools safe. We're also taking a phased approach to the resumption of learning at institutions of higher learning. From the 1st of June, all public universities are expected to implement remote teaching and learning strategies to ensure that all students are given a fair opportunity to complete the 2020 academic year. With the start of Alert Level 3, no more than a third of the student population will be allowed to return to campuses on condition that they can be safely accommodated. Institutions will open up further as the coronavirus alert level changes. As we mobilize our health resources to meet the expected surge of coronavirus cases, we must make sure that we do not create the space for the emergence of other health crises. Routine health services should therefore be fully opened and continue to provide services with attention to childhood immunization, contraceptive services, antenatal care, diagnosis and treatment of tuberculosis and HIV, management of chronic diseases, and support for survivors of gender-based violence. We need to consistently affirm that the rights of all people to life and dignity stands at the center of our response to the coronavirus, and that we must stand firm against any actions that infringe on these and other basic human rights that our people have, as guaranteed by our Constitution. Fellow South Africans, we have witnessed the courage of those who have continued to work throughout the nationwide lockdown, caring for those who are sick, providing food and basic services, working to keep our country going under difficult conditions. The burden of the lockdown has been most severe for those least able to bear it. Now it is time for most of us to return to work and to resume parts of our lives that have been on hold since the lockdown began. However, I want to emphasize that the easing of some restrictions does not mean that the threat posed by the coronavirus has passed or that our fight against the disease is over. In fact, the risk of a massive increase in infection is now greater than it has been since the start of the outbreak in our country. Now is the time when we must intensify our efforts and deepen our cooperation. Now we look once again to you, to your actions and to your sense of responsibility. We look to you to uphold the sanctity of life and the dignity of all people. We also look to you to protect the weakest and most vulnerable amongst us. We look to you to demonstrate the solidarity and compassion that has characterized the response of the South African people to this crisis. In meeting this grave challenge, we will move ahead as one people, united in action and determined that we will surely overcome. At this time, more than any other, we are reminded of the words of the father of our nation, Madiba, when he said, "It is now in your hands." May God bless South Africa and protect its people. I thank you.
All right, guys. I think that's it. He doesn't take any questions or anything like that. Yeah, we are good to go here. All right. Well, that was interesting. Please, those of you that are watching, please like this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Chris Wyatt is going to join me and he's going to give his thoughts. As I said, Chris Wyatt is a military man who worked in Africa for quite a while during his military years. He was in the military for 36 years. Very knowledgeable on South Africa, so you guys can ask him questions, his thoughts. I think he's going to join me in just a few moments. But yes, there's nothing else going on the channel. Chris, if you can hear me, please join me. And guys, comment. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts. Oh, here he is. He's coming on now.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Chris. Sorry we lost you there. I guess the red ants got a hold of you.
It looks like, I'm not so sure if it was on my end or your end, but whatever the case is, I kept saying the network connection wasn't there, but I have internet. I mean, I was watching the stream with a slight delay, so I don't know. Well, good news, bad news, and lots of confusion. I will say that at least this time I could understand what the hell Cyril Ramaphosa was talking about, as whatever medication he was on last time apparently had been lowered in dosage this time.
Yeah, he did seem a bit more confident, a bit more relaxed. This time he wasn't clearing
A bit
his
more
throat.
coherent.
Yes, absolutely. So what are your thoughts? Because we heard a lot of stuff. What are your thoughts? Very quickly, I know you've got to, guys, Chris will probably go into more detail about the speech on his channel, link in the description below. But very briefly, from what you've heard now and what you can remember, I know you got to go and get ready for that show. So what do you think so far? First impression.
No, I'm not in a rush unless you're trying to chase me off. I
No,
got
no,
time.
no. I don't know. I don't know how long you have until your next show.
No, my show's not until 9:30 your time, so
Okay.
I've got time for that. I'll get something to eat after we finish, and then I'll get my act together for that. Yeah, my thoughts on this. Well, this is nice, but the key thing that stands out from all this, which you're getting from officials around the world, is that we can do all of this, but he said that the virus, the difficult days are still to come. It's going to get much worse. Well, then what the hell was the purpose of the damn lockdown? What the purpose of it? Now, we were told in the U.S. that the purpose of the lockdown was to flatten the curve so that our hospitals wouldn't be overwhelmed.
Yes, same thing.
All right. We finished that weeks ago. The U.S. has been on the decline in new cases for several weeks now, yet we're still on lockdown. And in South Africa, you're going to continue not selling cigarettes to people because of their health. What is this nonsense? That's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, but if the virus is going to get much, much worse, letting people congregate and get together, how is that just anyway? It doesn't make any sense from a common sense standpoint. From an epidemiological standpoint, it makes no sense whatsoever. And guess what? Guess what? The criminalization of South Africans will continue. Let me give you two quick examples, then I'll stop so you can go. Gatherings of up to 50 people will be allowed, but sports will be prohibited. Well, I think someone mentioned her husband wanted to go fishing in here. Is that a sport? It is a sport. So can you be arrested for fishing, even though you're all by yourself and wearing a mask? Yeah, watch the police abuse that system. That's one example. And the exercise thing is very confusing. It was very pointed and noteworthy that he pointed out the Western Cape and Cape Town in particular. And so I suspect that the police will continue their unusual and unfair treatment of law-abiding citizens in the Western Cape in the midst of this. Disappointed in so many ways, but happy for South Africans that can go back to work. Of course, Cyril asked that you don't go back to work or go back to school, even though you can now. Yeah. What the hell? What are these people smoking, man? Are they hanging out with NDZ and Zala? Anyway.
Yeah, that is quite confusing. I think he was trying to say as well, like if the parents aren't comfortable with their kids going to school, let them stay home. But anyway, wasn't the regulation anyway that only grade 7 and grade 12 can go back to school? So I mean, but did he say now that everyone can go back to school, or was it still selective?
No, you heard correctly. He said that grades 7 and 12 will go back to school starting June 1st. He also said that universities were reopened, but then later he said only 1/3 of university students can go back. So who gets to go back? The medical doctors, ANC backers? Will this be used to discriminate against minorities? Yeah, this is yes.
I'm assuming that in the coming weeks we'll probably hear from all the ministers of each each department or whatever you want to call it, going into further detail about what the president said. That's been the trend. The president comes out, says a few things, it's kind of confusing, but it always seems to happen when the president has been gone for too long and tensions seem to rise between people. Like tonight there was that hashtag ANC must fall, and obviously people knew he was going to be on tonight. But again, he comes out. I saw in the comments a lot of people were saying it's the same stuff that he was saying last week. There's no difference, and I think the moment he said, "Oh, we can buy alcohol, but it's under certain times and only for home consumption." Okay, cool, giving us a bit of a carrot. But still, tobacco, that is the big one that I think everyone is catching on now and is saying, where is the sense? You're not giving us any real data to support the ban on cigarettes. And I mean, like you stated earlier, you said USA also doesn't sell alcohol, but cigarettes are allowed. Why? What is the excuse in your district or county or state for the ban on alcohol? What did they say about that?
Well, they didn't say anything. They left it to those of us to surmise what the reason, and most people surmise pretty quickly that the intent was to avoid social ills associated with people sitting at home having access to alcohol. While I understand that, I also am much more sympathetic to people who have diseases like addiction, alcohol addiction. They've caused all kinds of health problems and disaster and turned people into criminals, and people have died from making homebrew. That's not the government's fault, but the restrictions are the government's fault. Now, the lockdown on alcohol, or the restrictions on alcohol, are not all over the United States. It's in certain jurisdictions, and here in Pennsylvania, that's the case. You can still buy beer, to my knowledge, here, but you can't buy hard liquor and
Okay.
wine. But I haven't tried to buy beer, so. But I mean, in some places, it's banned altogether. But this ban on alcohol is absolutely, or not alcohol, cigarettes in South Africa is absolutely insane. It makes little sense. Now they're going to exacerbate the problem. Let me explain very quickly here. So you can buy alcohol for home consumption. That should have been allowed all along, but only during certain hours. So the queues in front of the package stores are going to be, for kilometers long. People backing up now from pent up demand, and you're going to have all kinds of things, fights breaking out, people tired of waiting, people closing the distance. There won't be social distancing in the lines and the queues. Open the damn stores up for normal operating hours that people know and are accustomed to, and let people go at a time they would normally go. There's nothing to be gained and everything to be lost by opening alcohol purchases, but only during a narrow window. The same nonsense we saw with the 3-hour window for exercise. It's ridiculous. You have 10 times as many people congregating in hours when they would space it out during the day when it's time available for them. This sort of nonsensical, non-scientific gobbledygook, it comes from incompetent governance, and people have no idea what they're doing. And I guess that kind of shows my modest view on it.
Absolutely, I agree with you. When he said like certain hours again, I was like, yeah, but now you're gonna have like so many people are gonna go to the alcohol store. I know a lot of my friends that were saying like, oh, I miss this beer or I miss this wine or whatever. And obviously, the people that really love their alcohol are just gonna rush now to the shops on the 1st of June or whenever it is that the alcohol ban is like you can buy alcohol and we're going to see large queues again. And it's funny how he mentions like, oh, we've got to be responsible now. Like I felt like he was talking to us as kids. Like, look, you know the rules and you're allowed to go out, but be careful, that was a bit condescending in my view. I didn't appreciate that. I think
It's very
you go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Joe. It's very paternalistic. And here, let me. You've heard it here first, folks. There's about 30 of us here in this right now. You've heard it from me. Maybe someone else will say it, but I'm not listening to someone else. This is from me. I'm telling you right now. If the ANC and the National Coronavirus Command Council were serious about this issue of cigarettes, then where are the news stories about the police investigating undercover operations to stop the illicit trade in dangerous and untaxed cigarettes that are being sold to millions of South Africans who've been buying them throughout this lockdown? If they really care about your health, why aren't they showing, perp walks with people who sell illicit cigarettes? Why is that not in the news every day? Why are we not hearing about it? Because it's not happening, because they're not serious about it. And one begins to wonder about the rumors, the supposition, the conspiracy theory. that maybe NDZ and others are profiting from this business. You have to begin to wonder at some point. I'm not making the allegation, but if the government were serious about this, resources would have been devoted to the illicit trade in cigarettes, especially during the lockdown. They're not serious. There's something dodgy going on here, and it needs to be exposed. Where's carte blanche? Where's it? Well, I know where SABC is. They've got their head up their fourth contact or rectum. They're busy in squatter camps, attacking poor, elderly, emaciated, Afrikaans-speaking squatters, going, well, you think you should get food packets? This is not a diverse community here. Why do you exclude black people from living in your abject poverty with no plumbing and no food? That's so unfair and racist of you. That's what the SABC is busy doing.
Absolutely. I can see you're very riled up, and it's fine. Vent, my friend, vent. What you were mentioning now, because there might be someone that might be thinking this. Beke Kele did say that they want to see receipts, which is absolutely absurd. But it was like he tried to play it off like, oh, we want to see receipts because if you don't have a receipt, then we want to know where you got it from because then we want to track. He's trying to play it off like that. And that was pretty much the only investigation. Then there was also an article that I think Ramon Kabanek, Morning Shot, for those of you who don't know, please go check out Morning Shot, was reading, that said in that article that Beke admitted that they were not doing a good job of handling the syndicate, handling the illegal trade of cigarettes. Like he admitted, we're not making headway on that, which is very interesting. That's all that was said really in the article. But yeah, that's the only mention. So
well, the issue I have with that is that this is just nonsense. This is simply, in my view, an effort to further criminalize South Africans. Because if you're foolish enough to present receipts for cigarettes that you purchased under lockdown, you've just admitted you committed a crime.
Exactly.
So why is anybody going to do that? And it's not serious. It's nonsensical. This is just political nonsense, propaganda put out there to give the impression the government is doing its job when it's not. One begins to wonder about the complicity of the SAPS, the South African Police Service, in this too. And customs and immigration. There must be a lot of people who are looking the other way to see this. Now, illicit trade in cigarettes is not unique to South Africa. We have it here in the United States. In fact, famously, extreme Muslim extremists were using cigarette trafficking from North Carolina up to the Midwest to sell cigarettes at twice this price and still sell them cheaper than they were because of taxes and making money to raise for terrorism. That's long been going on. So it's not just South Africa. But I'm not buying this Beke Kele's nonsense. No, I'm not buying it. No. It's not an effort to do law enforcement. It's an effort to either criminalize South Africans or give the false impression that the police are doing something productive when they're not even trying.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to look at some of the comments here. I think I saw Mikhail still watching. And by the way, thank you guys, everyone that's tuned in and everyone that's still watching. Thank you so much. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. I'll have Chris on my channel tomorrow. We're going to talk about 9/11, our different experiences with it. And then also I'm going to have other interesting talks with interesting people as well on my show in the future. Chris will be probably a regular now coming on. He's very popular, especially when it comes to South African topics and politics. I also chat to comedians as well. I'm a comedian, if you don't know, and I interview comedians as well. So please subscribe if you're enjoying this and give it a like. So I'm seeing a lot of comments. I'm seeing a lot of anger in the comments. Mikhail saying Zuma's son owns a tobacco company and Dlamini has been known to be affiliated with the illegal cigarette traders. Yes, that is the conspiracy theory that is being spoken about. How do you feel about that? Do you think it's real? Do you think the evidence, or the substantial evidence, I should say, that has been given, do you think there's just that one missing link now, that smoking gun maybe? Or do you think there's
I
enough
haven't seen enough of the evidence. I haven't seen enough of the evidence from my perspective, but I hadn't paid close attention to this issue before the lockdown took place. I'd heard rumors about it in the past and that some financial support there, but I haven't seen evidence of it. But that doesn't mean it's not real. It just means that I haven't seen enough of it to make that claim. But what I am doing now is I'm saying that one has to be given pause at this point and wonder what's going on here, because the arguments are nonsensical whatsoever. The scientific information when it comes to COVID-19 and smoking is all over the place. We see information from China and from France that people who actually smoke are purportedly, based on studies they've done, less likely to get the disease or recover from more quickly because of some positive impact of nicotine. I'm not encouraging people to smoke. I don't know that that's genuine. But at the same time, we see the South African government saying ostensibly the reason they're banning cigarettes is because it damages your lung capacity, and that's why you can't have cigarettes. So you have to wonder what's going on here. Now, I did see a question or a comment here about the dodgy idealist. I think it was his saying this fear mongering. What's fear mongering? What I said? Please, if I said something you say it's fear mongering, please let me know. I'll be happy to elaborate. Just because I went on a 30-second rant, because I'm doesn't mean that that's the full explanation, a full story, as you're hearing now with the cigarettes. No, I'm not one pushing the theory or concept that the Zuma family is profiting from this, but it has long been a rumor. This isn't new. It isn't, and it's not something that's just appeared. The actions of the government do not comport with reality or with science when it comes to cigarettes. I hate cigarettes. I don't smoke. Frankly, I don't care for the vaping. I don't get what you guys vape about, but that's not my business. That's your personal choice. But it seems like all South African YouTubers are addicted to vape, except for Willem Petzer. But everyone else seems to be into vaping. But and I know there's a lot more than the ones I talk to and hang out with. But the science doesn't support it at this point. And if it does, they're not making the argument to explain to us how the science supports it. I can smell a cigarette from 100 meters away, especially at night, and I can get a headache instantly from a cigarette when someone's smoking in a restaurant and they're not supposed to be. Honest, that's not embellishment, it's true. Yeah. Cigarettes disturb me. I don't care for them. I was around them. My mother smoked incessantly. She still does. But that doesn't mean you don't have a right and privilege to smoke cigarettes, and the government's not making a legitimate case to explain why you can't have cigarettes. So the only logical conclusion one can make at a certain point is that the illicit trade is benefiting someone other than illicit traders.
Absolutely. The dodgy idealist says he meant the government is fear-mongering. He wasn't talking about you. And Mikhail says it's not a conspiracy theory. The Dlamini Zuma campaign for ANC presidency was funded by Muzati, who had been under surveillance for illegal cigarette trafficking. That is true. He has confessed on an affidavit that he is a cigarette trafficking person for what's it called, smuggling. He's a smuggler and money laundering and all that stuff. So that's on record. But again, the connection between, like, yes, the Sun. Everyone says like, oh, the Sun owns the company. It's the same company that makes the cigarettes that are on the black market. That's yes, that's true. That's very true. But then it's the Sun that's benefiting. And people are now making the connection with the mother, saying like because the son's benefiting, the mother is now making the cigarettes banned. That's the connection. But again, I think even someone like you would say there needs to be a little bit more concrete evidence, or is that enough? Is that enough to say well, it's true?
It's enough to raise questions and warrant further investigation, I believe. There's just a preponderance of information there. Excuse me. But the evidence, I haven't seen prima facie evidence that this is what people suppose. People have told us. And that's enough to make people question things. I'll buy that. But we actually need to, most of the stuff that I comment on is based on actual factual evidence. We can prove it. We can point to it, what was said, what was done. We either have actual physical evidence. Anyway, but yeah, I think it certainly warrants further attention. Beth has made a very interesting comment here, but let me jump in on Beth's. She says that the idea was to prevent violent crime cases that will flood the hospitals. But as I said from the outset of the alcohol ban, that's very short-sighted. The government claiming that crime has gone down during the lockdown is not credible in my book, because hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of crimes that are occurring behind doors are not being reported because people cannot go to the police station. And now I don't want to hear this. Yes, you can go to the police. No, you can't, because you risk being arrested for something else. So here's what's happening behind closed doors while the authorities cannot see it and cases are not reported. Incest. Daughters are being molested and raped by their fathers in large numbers. Yes, I know that's an unpleasant topic, but folks, that's a reality. That goes on each and every day. Now these fathers have access, and uncles have access to these girls for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Not only the hours they're not in school or these clowns are off working somewhere. Those cases are up. Domestic violence has not gone down. It has gone up from people who cannot tolerate each other 24 hours a day, who are now around each other. Whether there's alcohol involved or not, people are beating their spouses and their partners. That is happening.
Yes.
There are cases of rape taking place that are probably off the charts. Now, I have no evidence to support this, but I know what happens when these situations take place. I've been in environments where people have been locked down in countries, in diplomatic communities, and in cities and countries around the world in different events, and these are the things that happen. The government not paying attention to that and stopping the flow of alcohol has not been productive in my view. It has been counterproductive. Now, if they allowed alcohol sales, you would see an increase in these sort of crimes, but you're seeing an increase in these sort of crimes not solely attributable to the availability of alcohol, but because you put people together who don't spend normally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for extended periods of time together, driving each other nuts, or those who are abusive having free access to be abusive 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's kind of where I'm at on that.
No, I agree with you because, like, here's the thing as well. Like, I've come across some articles doing my own research where they state, like, a baby abandonment, that's gone up. People just abandoning their babies. There's been, gender-based violence has increased phenomenally. There's been an increase in all that stuff that you're talking about, absolutely. And there are articles out there, but they seem to just they're not pushed by the media too hard. They rather push the, like you said, the racist the racist poor little community. They'd rather pay that apparently discriminate. They'd rather push that out than the actual problems. Because I mean that baby thing that I heard was literally 2-3 days ago, where a charity was saying that they got 3 babies in one day dropped at their doorstep, and they think it's going to get even worse. So those are real problems. There's absolutely, I agree with you 100%.
Well, Beth gave some feedback on that, and she has a good point here that part of it was to not have hospitals overrun with stabbings and terrible car accidents. Well, I think that's a condemnation on the level of violence in South Africa and road conditions there and road driving. Yes, traffic accidents are definitely down. There's no doubt about that. The incidence of murder, I don't know the statistics of it. It would be interesting to know if the government bothered to get around to releasing statistics on that anytime soon. But I doubt that we've reduced violent murders to nothing or assaults. That's probably still happening, especially in townships. But anyway, so that's interesting. And then Mikhail said that it was largely to avoid social congregation. Well, okay, I'll accept that argument, Mikhail. That makes sense. Keep people out of bars and dance clubs and things like that, or social events like weddings, no alcohol. Okay, then why couldn't people buy it for home consumption all along? That's my point. That should have been allowed.
Yeah. Look, I'm gonna call it now because there are a lot of people that are leaving. So it's fine. I think everybody wants to just digest what they've heard now, and Also, I don't want to hog you, and I also want to tune into when you go on later. So once again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. For those of you who are new to my channel, please subscribe. Like I said, I'll have Chris Wyatt on with me tomorrow. We're going to be talking about 9/11, and we'll be talking about. He's going to be like a regular guest now, so I don't know. We'll find topics to talk about, and then I have other topics that I talk about. Just subscribe to my channel. I've uploaded everything. You'll see what's upcoming, and you'll see what I've done in the past. Interviews with comedians, interviews with Chris. We spoke about the the U.S. Space Force. Space Force. That was a very interesting conversation. Please go check that out. And thank you once again, all of you, for tuning in. Please like this video. Chris, thank you for giving up some of your time. I hope you'll join me again if the president speaks. It was very interesting.
Well, Joe, thanks a lot. Actually, the last time we spoke, I did a stream, but I did the stream kind of impromptu because I went to Ronaldo's channel, and there were like 18,000 people there, and the chat went by faster than we could visibly see comments. So I said, hey, I'm going to go to my channel, and I just went on, and then at least a good 30 or 40 people came over, and at least they could get their comments in. We could comment on it. So yeah, but I will not stream the next time. But it's very cheeky of you, Joe. I mean, you don't pay me anything to come on your channel to say I'll be on more. But
like I said, I'm a comedian, Chris. You know that we don't make a lot of money.
yeah, you are. That's true.
This is all I have.
But yeah, that's all you have. But what you have is quite nice. It's a good setup there. No, but I will, for folks still tuned in, as Joe said, I will be on at 21:30 or 9:30 for you civilians tonight in South Africa. That would be 3:30 or 15:30 here in Eastern Standard Time in the U.S. And I'll be talking about all these things that Cyril has told us are now going to happen in South Africa, and expand a bit more on the things I've just talked about with Joe. Hey, Joe, thanks a lot for having me on. It was a pleasure. I need to recharge my battery. It's like going down rapidly on my mobile. So anyway, I'll see those who want to join me at 9:30 or 3:30 here on the East Coast. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Link is in the description, guys. Thank you, Chris, once again, and thank you, everybody, once again for tuning in. I'll see you tomorrow with Chris again at 8:30. Like I said, talking about 9/11, and go check him out at 9:30 tonight. You're going to enjoy it. He's a lot of fun. All right, guys. Good night. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.